welcome to the CIO Zone.
Thanks, Roger. Pleasure to be here.
And right behind us is the EMC stand.
Yep, there it is. Very, very busy down there. Lots of activity. Very gratified to see that.
Tell our viewers a little bit about your role at
Sure.
RSA.
Happy to. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer for RSA, the security division of EMC. I'm responsible for defining the overall technology strategy for the division. And I work a lot with the other CTOs at EMC in terms of how does security fit into EMC's overall strategy. And then finally work a lot with our partners, VMware in particular,
Makes sense.
Cisco, lots of others in terms of how does security fit into the broader ecosystem.
Do you get out into the actual user community as well and speak to those folks?
Yes, I am on the road like almost every week, so I spend a lot of time talking to chief security officers. I think I learn more from talking to chief security officers and our customers in the field than anything else I do. It's very, very helpful.
I believe that. So really your job is like part marketing, part QA, because I'm sure you use the products as well.
Absolutely. Yep. We do. My group, especially my advanced development group, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, but my advanced development group takes some of our existing products and pushes the envelope. How can we expand, integrate, and demonstrate new value?
The cloud is a phenomenon, and virtualization together.
Yes.
And when we're talking about every decade, there are a couple of big things. This is certainly the big thing in this decade.
No question.
And I think we'll be dealing with the outcomes of these directions for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's not a matter of if, it's when, right?
Exactly.
It's how long it's going to take for that adoption. I believe it's going to happen pretty fast. Some people are skeptical. Maybe it'll take a bunch of years, but I think once it starts, it's just going to be a steamroller.
Security is a major factor.
It is.
And I think from a perception standpoint, it's still early days in a sense that there's some skepticism and some fear, in many cases probably not founded on anything in particular. So from your position, how do you deal with these perceptions and even more important, the realities of the challenges that security presents in a cloud environment?
Well, I think the change, the disruption of the cloud is that enterprises are losing some control, right? I mean, that's really what's happening is that, currently, typically,
which they don't like.
Which they don't. And of course, the reason they're doing it is hopefully to save some money and be flexible and all that. But it comes at a cost, and the cost is the fact that now no longer do they have those employees in their own data center, right, that are controlling their data. So the question is, when enterprises are going to use these cloud service providers, can they trust those service providers to really take care of the data as well as the enterprises with themselves?
Exactly.
So that's why security, visibility, control, compliance, that's why it's so key to adoption of the cloud.
And transparency, too. Because in the security business in general, transparency, you don't usually hear transparency and security in the same sentence.
That's absolutely true. So if it's within an organization, you don't have to tell anybody. Keep it, right? But now the service providers have to be transparent back to those tenant customers.
In a sense, this is a similar, or at least a parallel situation to the open source world, where a lot of the open source community and others who are security experts say, more people banging on it, the more exposed the framework is, the more secure it'll be ultimately. But there's some people who will never believe that.
That's an interesting analogy. I hadn't thought about it that way compared to open source. I mean, I think some of the differences is in open source, you can look at code ahead of time and hopefully it gives you some confidence. Whereas if we think about the service provider, it's not like the service providers can be transparent one time.
Never.
They have to be transparent all the time.
Or never.
Right. And again, to the point of the existing service providers, focus typically on very small organizations, are not transparent at all, right? Which is part of the challenge.
And I've heard that actually from customers, from CIOs, who tell me that it's worrisome to them, not in that they don't trust people, because they do, but they don't trust technology because they've had enough experience.
You need evidence, right? You need something.
And if they're going to put their hand over their heart, and under the various governance, audit kinds of things, they have to have some rational reason for being confident.
Well, it's even more than that. I mean, if they're going to keep their job, right?
Exactly.
Because if they don't have the evidence, chances are something's going to go wrong.
And I found universally among CIOs keeping their job is a high priority.
I mean, it's a tough job to keep, but as best as they can.
And in fact, keeping it today today is much tougher because the governance and the people looking over the shoulder and as you say, the remote aspect, not under your roof and in your four walls.
And then add the financial pressures on top of that.
So have you seen a change in the providers that they're more willing to sort of open the kimono and
I mean, I think or at least they recognize that requirement. I mean, there are so many service providers we're talking to, whether it's in the telecom space, systems integrators, the new ones that are focused more on SaaS offerings. Anybody that's thinking about really enterprise quality, mission critical type applications, they realize that they have to, as part of their offering, deal with these requirements around trust and demonstrating evidence, enough evidence that they secure the environment, or those tenants aren't going to be willing to use their services. It's really that simple. So they are actively seeking good technologies to be able to assemble.
That's encouraging to hear.
Definitely the case.
And it takes a while before the creators of content start to understand the capabilities of the new medium and adjust to it. And I sense that we're in a very parallel situation where security is very much an afterthought for most application builders in the past. And I think that's changing gradually, but not palpably.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that really is the fundamental difference, certainly as I think about the strategy for RSA and making sure our division survives and thrives in this new world.
Right.
It's all about embedding of security.
Taking it in.
And that is absolutely necessary in this cloud service provider approach, because what's happening is each service provider defines their own stack. Unlike a typical enterprise use case where enterprises pick one product, another product, they combine them together, you can mix and match, and so vendors have an opportunity to sell things one at a time.
And it's not like a chemistry experiment where you just mix things together.
It's all, and a service provider, the provider gives you the service and you take it or leave it, right? You can't add or subtract different kinds of
It's a bit of a black box in a sense.
Exactly. And so if RSA, for example, isn't part of that service provider offering, the end customer will never see it. So that's why that embedding, defining that stack, being part of that stack is so critical.
I think it's fair to say that security is going to be one of the big issues that will differentiate companies in the next
And I actually believe it is probably the big issue, right? Because of the issues around trust that we talked about. It is the first major thing that has to be overcome to deal with those kinds of mission critical applications.
When we go back to the golden triangle, which is people, process, and technology, technology is fairly straightforward to change and develop. People, not much the same. So there's some cultural issues and there's some behavior issues in the way programmers operate. Do you have a program which sort of extends into those areas so that you're not just providing technology, but also try to help them move their
Definitely, and I think I've made that same analogy. How important understanding the combination of people, process, and technology are. In fact, if you think about managing enterprise risk, and you think about the policies around people, process, technology, in a way that hasn't changed in 100 years.
That's true.
Right? Information is a thing that's important. The technology was a little different. We had paper and pencil, and we relied a lot more on the people part, right? But so what's happened is the technology takes more of a burden of protecting that information, right? That's true. We're not putting those pieces of paper in locked doors, behind locked doors anymore, right? So I think that analogy continues to evolve, right? In terms of the trade-off, solving the same policy problem, but different emphasis, more and more emphasis on, again, technology embedded, right? Security technology embedded in that infrastructure to solve the problem. So that's in fact why a lot of what we're doing around governance, risk, and compliance is so important, and Archer in particular.
Yes.
Because it's all about business process, right? And it gets right back to the people, process, and technology. It helps to guide the process in terms of those trade-offs of how much, and it's not going to be the same for any given system.
No, of course not.
The kinds of IT controls you need, and how many are going to be manual, and how many are going to be automated, how many are going to be virtualized, how many are going to be physical, how many are in the cloud, how many are in the data center. Those controls will continue to evolve over time, and that's a good thing. That's the process, is expecting that technologies evolve, right? Well, the processes remain the same. How you implement those processes change, right, as you move things around. And a tool like Archer helps that business process.